Acapulco, Mexico. This is Anarchast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for dangerous anarchy on the internet. It's super dangerous. I got a great returning guest coming back in from the Texas area, or Tejas as they call it here in Mexico. He was actually down here at Acapulco, just saw him a few weeks ago, but then I heard he's going on this crazy world tour, or at least a US tour, but it's actually crazy looking at it. It's called the Decentralize Your Life Tour. And it's something crazy like, I'll just talk about the West Coast tour. He'll be in Oakland, California, July 22nd, San Francisco, July 23rd, Humboldt County, July 24th, Reno, Nevada, July 26th, Salt Lake City, July 27th. This goes on and on and on for pretty much the entire U.S. It's like crazier than a Grateful Dead tour. And as well, he just finished a book. It's actually not even out yet, but it might be out by the time you see this, called Manifesto of the Free Humans, Part 3 of the Conscious Resistance Trilogy by John Vibes, another past Anarchast guest, and Derrick Broze. So two big things to talk about, Derrick. Which one do you want to talk about first?
I guess we can start with the book, because the book is definitely part of the reason for the tour.
All right, so let's talk about it. I don't think it's quite out yet. You sent me a preview, because I'm special, to let me take a look at it, and I liked it a lot. I haven't read the whole thing, obviously. You just sent it to me last night, but I think the first part one, the first chapter is called A Strategy for Defeating the State. So I definitely like it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it's all about?
Sure. So first off, thanks, Jeff, for letting me come on again and talk to the Anarchast audience, who I think is definitely one of the main target audiences that John and I are trying to reach with this book. So as you said, this is the third book in the Conscious Resistance Trilogy. The past interviews we've focused on my work with those books, which has been exploring the intersection of anarchism and spirituality and trying to bring a conscious message, a more spiritual message that goes beyond just the physical, politics, economics, morality arguments that many anarchists make, and instead trying to go deeper into the way we live our lives. And this final book in the trilogy is really the culmination of what we've been saying in the past. This is also, we decided to set out that we wanted to make as close to a literal handbook for people to read on how to exit the state, how to vacate the state, how to actually apply the ideas of agorism into their life, and how to be a part of the counter economy. So that's a big chunk of this. It's divided into three parts. As you said, the first part is called A Strategy for Defeating the State. And in that part, we just look at the history of agorism as first outlined by Samuel E. Konkin III, and then we talk about some of the individualist anarchists, American anarchists from like the 18th century, and talk about some of their ideas. Then we expand upon agorism with our ideas of vertical and horizontal agorism and lay out the concept of freedom cells, which is a big part of my work recently, and just working in small groups. It's similar in concept to Bob Podolsky's octalogs, but different in certain ways. But that's a big part of the why or the how to actually apply and create agorism that Samuel Konkin predicted. And then we break down some of the differences and what makes agorism its own specific philosophy. And then the second part of the book is really where we're looking at these, I guess you could say, these conflict areas, because we look at how to provide public services or services to the people, the public, without the state, which I think many of us have spent time reading about and figuring out. So we lay down our case on how this could happen. We also look at some arguments related to the environment or just our interaction with the environment in a free society, and then we spend time talking about the authoritarian right and left. That's an essay that we've already put out. We put out 3 essays so far that people can find at theconsciousresistance.com. And I'm really proud of the authoritarian right and left essay because it's just extremely timely with what's going on. You have the alt-right, extreme right authoritarians, and for some reason some libertarians being willing to align and ally with them. And then you've got the extreme left, which is, the radical left, kind of Antifa and others. And this essay just tries to point out that authoritarianism, tyranny, statism can come from both the right and the left. And so anarchism, true libertarianism, this freedom message should be center, should be the starting point, and everything else from there is just varying degrees of statism. It doesn't mean we can't, work with different people in different ways, but there's a mistake, I think, being made right now where libertarians and freedom-minded people have aligned with the right for so long during the Obama age because they were the Tea Party and things like that, that now they're continuing to work with them even though they're empowered. And really, I think we're both pretty confident to say that it's all just a charade or just a game of getting people to go back and forth, fight on this side, the left or the right or this, And we just want people to see that there's actually authoritarianism and statism coming from all directions. And then probably my two favorite chapters in this section, the next two, deal with arguments between propertarians, those who believe in private property as an ethic, and private property leads to more freedom and things like that, and those who believe that private property or private ownership of property is, a crime or is theft and things like that. So the chapter is called Panarchist Experiments: Can Propertarians and Non-Propertarians Coexist? And we just do a couple of thought experiments and say, okay, neighbor A moves on this plot of land, neighbor B moves on this one, this guy doesn't believe in property and this guy does, and here's a couple of conflicts. How can we resolve these in the absence of the state? And is it possible? Is this even going to be something that we could actually do? So John and I laid down our ideas, and I don't think they'll necessarily convince everybody that, hey, we can all live in a peaceful society, but I do think we lay down a pretty strong case for communication, for nonviolent communication, things like what we're now calling in this book holistic anarchism. We're sort of stepping away from calling it the Conscious Resistance. It's the Conscious Resistance book series, it's the website and things like that. But really the philosophy and the ideas that we've developed, we're now calling holistic anarchism. And when you look at the term holistic and what it truly means, it just means it's from the philosophy of holism and dealing with whole systems, whole people, instead of just looking, for example, like holistic health. People sometimes think, oh, that's just woo-woo, hippie, whatever stuff. But it really just means treating the whole of the body, not just treating the disease, or the symptoms of the disease itself. So in that sense, we take holistic anarchism to say that our anarchist message, our message of freedom, shouldn't just be about, politics or morality or those things. Obviously, those are important, but that it's also about the way we live our lives on a daily basis. And I think this is something that maybe you've started to, and many others seem to be coming to understand based on what I saw at Anarchapulco, is that the message of anarchism is evolving, I think, and it's going beyond just those particular things, just beyond only talking about Bitcoin or only talking about property or only talking about the non-aggression principle. Having those things be a part of the conversation, but also recognizing that the ways that we live our lives are equally important, and that there's other systems of power that we can contribute to or take our support from. One example I like to use is most people are either against Monsanto related to the statism, the corporatism of that company. Some people are against genetically modified foods. There's different reasons, but generally people are against companies like Monsanto. You could also be against them and some of the larger companies and really the unsustainable food distribution systems themselves, because in any sort of calamity, say like you've seen down in Venezuela, the food production systems break down, and if people are totally dependent on that, when the shit hits the fan or economic collapse or just really anything, even if nothing happens, you have to accept the reality that you remain dependent on some external party for your food. And that is a dangerous way to live. So if you want to take power away from Monsanto, if you want to take more power into your hands and become more independent, then you grow your own food, or you support maybe a community farm or a close by farm, a nearby farm, by giving them your being a customer of them and giving them your business and things like that. If you can't build it, essentially supporting those who are already doing it. Things like that are equally important and a part of this vertical, horizontal, agorism, holistic anarchism as the non-aggression principle, because what we're trying to put forward is that we can try to create the counter economy, we can push past the state, and we can grow this message. But ultimately, if the way that we're living our lives, not only in the food production systems and education systems, so you want to support unschooling, peaceful parenting, world schooling, all those things are important, but equally important, probably most important, is the internal tyrant, the internal battle. So that's, again, where the holistic message goes even deeper and talks about who you are as a person and how you are inside. If you're all screwed up inside, if you're all hung up about things you have guilt in the past or things you regret, or just there's different issues that we all deal with in different ways based on our environment and our upbringing and our responses and reactions to those circumstances. So the goal then is to know yourself on a deeper level, and this could come through simple self-reflection. It can come from meditation. It can come from psychedelic teachers and medicines. It can come in a number of different ways, or it can come simply, as I said, from just walking and self-reflection 5 to 10 minutes a day, making that a regular habit of your life, so that you get to know yourself deeper and you can start to heal the traumas that we all face in different ways, get over your doubts, fears and insecurities and become a more empowered person. That's what the holistic anarchist message is really about. And that's where the third part goes into. The third part of the book is called Creating Conscious Agoras. And essentially, in that last beginning of that last part of the book, John and I announced that we are planning to launch an intentional community built around these principles in 2020. The location isn't set in stone by any means, but a big part of going out on tour is to help connect with other communities, to learn from other people who are already building free communities, free-minded anarchist communities, and then to feed that information into what we build. And a big part of that as well is to say by 2020, when people are gearing up to vote again for some president, we're going to say, all right, we're going to launch an intentional community, and you guys follow your president for 4 years. We're going to bust our ass for 4 years spreading the message of freedom and building a free community that can sustain itself and can show people another way of living, and we'll see which one provides more value for our lives, the president or choosing to live different. And the community is also being guided by this triangle that John and I came up with, and this image is within the book. And it's obviously it's a triangle, so there's 3 points, 3 main concepts that we're bringing into this community. What we call conscious agora is the top would be sovereignty of the individual, which is Josiah Warren, American individualist anarchist in the late 1700s. That's his phrasing for what could be known as the non-aggression principle. We prefer the phrasing sovereignty of the individual, but it's essentially the same thing. He just said that every person, every individual is a sovereign over their own life, and they should respect that about other people and not infringe on their ability to be sovereign over their own life and their possessions and everything like that. So that's obviously the foundation for it. Then in the bottom right corner, we have this concept of permagora, which is permaculture and agorism together, the synthesis of this. And permaculture is, of course, the synthesis of permanent agriculture and thinking in long terms, thinking of when you're building things, when you're planting your food, when you're building your home, all these kind of things, you take into consideration the slope of the earth, where water gathers, how it's going to affect the animal life, and how to work with the local habitats and ecosystem rather than being invasive and destructive. So it's really just a brilliant way to grow food, to build and to farm. And we're trying to bring those methods into the agorist message as much as trying to get the permaculture farmers to be aware of the agorist message, because many of them, they already are against the government. They're looking for alternative ways to live, but then they turn around and they support permaculture licenses and things like this. And so we're trying to get them in there to understand, like, hey, you don't need your licenses to do this. Just build the way that you know is a better way. So that would be the second corner. And then the third final corner is mindfulness. Again, meditation, nonviolent communication, group dynamics, group communication, individual self-reflection, all these things, we want those to be a regular part of the community that we're trying to build. So we have the sovereignty of the individual. Each person is empowered and able to live their life as they choose, as long as they're not infringing upon anybody else. Bringing in the permaculture aspect in our building and our growing food and our housing, and then bringing in the mindfulness aspect. And when you apply that with the philosophy of agorism and counter-economics, that leads to what we call the conscious agora. So the last part of the book just breaks down that, the sovereignty of the individual, permagora, mindfulness. And then we also, in the last 2 chapters, we look at mobility versus homesteading, because, in this sort of movement, we've got people who are out there seasteaders. We've got people like Michael Fielding trying to sail boats around the world and have the Freedom Fleet. There's the Bitcoin bus and the Dash Mobile. So there's some people who say, you know what, to me, freedom is actually the ability to be mobile, to leave whenever I want, to pick up and not be tied down to land. So we look at some different arguments and say that essentially people may choose to live differently. Maybe you want to live, in a community like we're describing, or maybe you just want to be like the freedom grounds in Texas, which is basically just people living in the same neighborhood trying to, sort of like the Free State, trying to take over the neighborhood with the libertarian message. Maybe you want to live isolated, alone. Or maybe freedom to you is being on the road. We look at all these different types of lifestyles and examine them from our viewpoint and try to give some ideas on that. And the final chapter is called Getting Off the Grid and Defending the Agora. And this is where we really kind of hit home for our rallying cry, which we do a little bit of math and look at what it would take to actually try to have some sort of tax resistance effort that could hurt the state. And I'm not saying I have much faith in people doing this, because it's been tried dozens and hundreds of times in the past to organize, national tax resistance. And people just really aren't that motivated. They're afraid. There's lots of things that keep them from doing it. But we figure out the amount of people that it would take to take away the entire defense budget just by removing income tax. If we had enough people to just not give them income tax to work in the black and gray markets and not report their income, you could seriously take away the defense budget of the state, which would then either force them to do more quantitative easing, printing more money, devaluing the currency further, which is just going to work against them and work towards getting rid of the state in the long term, or they're going to start cutting from public programs to fund their wars, and that's just going to piss people off as well. So we're kind of saying, like, hey, if this could be organized and we could actually grow the agorist movement, the Freedom Zone network, to the point of organizing and withholding their money from them, they would take note, and it would be a powerful tool. And again, we invite people to, support us as far as if they're interested in being involved with that community. And so that's the bulk of the book. As you said, it's going to be coming out April 7th at the Free Your Mind conference in Philadelphia that I'm speaking at for the third year. This is the third year that John and I have released our book, Free Your Mind. And after this, we're taking a break from writing with each other, and he's going to work on another book, and I'm going to work on something else. But this is, I think that all the books work well together, and they don't necessarily need to be read in the order they came out. It probably is helpful to do so, but I also feel very confident that this book stands alone on its own, that even if people haven't read any of our other work, this is the one that I wish they would read then, because this gives, we're not just trying to repeat and parrot all the thought leaders from the past, which is, no offense to anybody else, that's sometimes what a lot of these books are, is they take the best quotes from all the different teachers and repackage them and reword them a little bit, and there you got a book. So we reference different people from the past, but we're trying to put forth new ideas and come up with a workable plan on how to have freedom that can involve people of all different kinds of economic stripes, and can hopefully find equilibrium and work together and find true spontaneous order as we try to move towards a more free society.
Well, you didn't talk very much about the book there. You didn't give me much to think about. I did notice, though, you mentioned that you have a triangle in the book, Illuminati. Anyway, you brought up so many good points. One of them that I thought was quite interesting, and you cover so many different topics. That's one of the interesting things about it. And one thing that I've personally learned over the last couple of years that I didn't know anything about was what you're talking about, sort of fixing yourself or doing the inner work is become a big sort of a thing for me personally. So up until a few years ago, I was just trying to fix the outer world, the external stuff, try to deal with the external problems, always focusing on the external. But what I didn't realize was the internal was just as important, or even more important in many ways. And I've been doing that over the last couple of years, and it's really been eye-opening to me how much is actually just programmed. So many things are just in your subconscious that you don't even know. And that's why you said you should do some meditation, or even just take some time, go for a walk and think about what you're doing, because it's actually true. And one of the reasons I started smoking about 5 years ago, I told a lot of people that part of the reason was I wanted to see how hard it was to quit. It turned out it wasn't hard at all to quit. I read a book called The Easy Way to Stop Smoking, and I never smoked again after that. But what that process told me was, because I was smoking up to like 3 packs a day at one point, I always take everything to its fullest extreme. And when I quit, I was like, whoa, I didn't realize just how much the cigarettes were controlling me, because I'd be like meditating for like half an hour. I'd be really into it. And then I'd be like all of a sudden thinking about smoking, and I'd quit meditating to go have a cigarette, and I'd be smoking there going, what the hell, why did I quit meditating? That was so good to do this. And I didn't realize, and what you start to realize is that you actually have so many things controlling you in your own personal life that you don't even fully realize, including things like food, which is another thing that I've gotten into with things like Juice Fast now. Just realizing just how much that you use the food to control or help you deal with, or not have to deal with your emotions. So I've gotten into like not controlling that now, so I don't even really have any need to eat at any particular time anymore and things like that. So I've gotten into so many of these things. And of course, you've gotten into so many of these things in the book, but maybe you want to comment a little bit on that.
Yeah, no, I again, like I was saying to you earlier before we started, I think it's pretty cool just to see the transformation that you've personally been undertaking. And I do think it's also valuable for us to share our journeys publicly with people, because then other people empathize with that. They're like, oh, wow, I'm dealing with the same thing. They've got advice, and we all grow together, things like that. And I was wondering about the cigarette thing. I'm sitting here looking, I'm like, where's the cigarette at? But I think it is interesting to hear you say that you did it to see if you could push past it, because I like to test myself like that as well. I often do things to try to see if I can, what I'm capable of doing, what I'm capable of overcoming. And ultimately, this is what I said at Anarchapulco. I don't think you were in the room when I gave my talk, but I just tried to reiterate, like, everything we're going over here. I talked about the holistic anarchist message. I showed the triangle. I showed the vertical, horizontal. I talked about the book. But there was a point where I clearly said, okay, now everything I told you up to this point, none of it matters if we don't work on ourselves. If we're all broken, then none of this matters. And that's just the truth of it. And I feel like sometimes those who are just stuck in a strictly logical, rational, materialist worldview constantly and can't step outside of that, they just see that as a cop-out. Like, if somebody tells you, hey, well, ultimately the answer is inside yourself. Like, whatever. Like, there's got to be some government I can overthrow or somebody I can vote out or something I can do in the physical world. And obviously, I'm sitting here talking about physical solutions, growing your own food, becoming more sustainable and independent. But that really is that only takes you so far. You can create your little paradise and be in the community you want, and you can have agorist activity and all your food and all these different things. But at the end of the day, until you've been able to face your own shadow, as some people like to put it, there's going to be something itching at you, something that needs to be uncovered and unturned. And obviously ayahuasca and things like that can be very helpful. And sometimes people don't need to take ayahuasca. They don't need to go to prison like I did to have this awakening. They can just come to the conclusion, hey, you know what? I need to live a better life. Let me do this. But there are those of us who like to take the hard way. And I think that what I'm trying to do and what John and I are trying to do now with this book is put it out there, give people tangible solutions. Like, here's 10 things you can do to start a freedom cell. Here's 10 things you can do. Here's steps you can take in your community. Here's some apps that help you. But then at the same time, reiterate the message that the other two books focus on, which is you need to empower yourself. We are powerful, awesome, beautiful people. But until we realize our own value, then it's kind of hard to realize the value and the worth of other people around you. But then, it also works the opposite way. Once you start realizing how great you are and, the full potential of yourself, it's easy to be like, wow, like, not only do I have this potential, but all of these other people have this potential. And if we came together, we could do some really great things, and it makes it easier, I think, to care about other people once you start caring about yourself, and not in an overly egotistical way, self-centered, sort of a vulgar, individualistic mentality, but enough to say that I have worth, and I think that for me personally, it took a long time to be able to say that and to confidently believe that, like, okay, I deserve to be happy. I should seek to, find the things that are going to provide value to my life. And one other thing, and I don't know if this is necessarily even related to exactly what you're asking, but I think it's an important point that's been coming to me. I plan to do a video on this really soon, and I was realizing this in Mexico, spending 3 weeks traveling through Mexico leading up to Anarchapulco, and I had somebody come comment on one of my Facebook, like, how do you afford to travel? And it was kind of like one of those Snyder marks every now and then, like, oh, who's paying your ticket? Who's doing, just whatever.
Illuminati.
Oh, I've already been accused. And I felt like it was coming from, generally these kind of things come from, I don't want to say jealousy, but some sort of insecurity where it's like, hey, this person's out there doing something and I'm not. Like, let me poke at them and find there has to be some way to explain, oh, somebody's paying for this. Yeah, it's not a cool thing. But what I got from that and what I want to reiterate to people is that this world, the state's world that, we sort of coexist in to some degree, it's not designed to serve your spiritual, physical, or mental health. Like, it is designed to make you a slave and to make you submissive to this authoritarian system and to make you play their game. So they're not going to tell you in school, and when you get out of school, most of your parents and friends who've also been indoctrinated the same are not going to tell you, put your spiritual health first, put your mental health first, put your physical health first, above making money, above, making, doing what other people want you to do, above getting a job and all these things. Do whatever makes you happy inside. That's not the message that we're really getting, but I think that is what we need to take home. And I really hope that my work can help people understand that ultimately you have to structure your life in a way that's going to feed that health for yourself. Nobody else is going to do it for you. The world is not going to bend to your will per se, but you can arrange your life. And for me, everybody's got different lifestyles and preferences and things like that. But ultimately, we can still find a way to serve the causes that we want, to fulfill ourselves in the way that we need, in a way that's truly lasting. And as I think many of us realize over time, that material wealth can only go so far. And creating a life that really does put your spiritual health first. And that might make you one of these, loner, weirdo, crazy people in the world because you're swimming against the current. But you also probably find value and happiness in your life. Once you stop listening to what people tell you is going to make you happy, and you decide that what is going to make you happy comes first, I really think that's when we're going to be taking freedom into a whole new direction. And I also want to add to that our buddy Sterling Lujan, who also spoke at Anarchapulco, in the past year, him and John and I have all become a bit closer, and Sterling came and stayed in Houston after Anarchapulco, and he spoke at our festival out here, and just got to spend more time talking. And the three of us really feel like we're kind of in the same genre, so to speak. Sterling calls his relational anarchism, and it's coming from his background as a psychology student, and we call ours holistic anarchism or the conscious resistance, conscious anarchism. But we're all in a similar sphere, trying to get people to understand that our relationships that we're building are just as important. The relationship we have with ourselves, the relationship we have with the people in our community, and the way we treat people and the way that we act and live on a daily basis is just as important, if not more important, as understanding the ins and outs of these various political philosophies. So we're happy to be taking anarchism into a whole new direction, because before, when I gave my first talk in 2013 at Anarchy in the NYC, I think you were there in New York, that was the first time I spoke about shamanism and Buddhism and anarchism and agorism and tried to put it together. And, I got a good reception overall from people. I think some people didn't know who I was, but the people who paid attention came over and like, hey, I want to know more about meditation. What can you tell me about this? And it inspired me to keep going. I was like, okay, everybody's not just atheists. There are others who are looking for a deeper message. And in the time since then, in the past 4 years, leading up to Anarchapulco, it's just been beautiful for me to go there and see, wow, there's so many more people who are not pushing necessarily the message that I am, but that we're all pushing in these new directions, like compassionate communication, nonviolent communication. I heard that over and over at Anarchapulco, and people reiterating that the lifestyle is just as important as the economics and the politics, that the way you live, the person that you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I've witnessed that myself, and the changes I've gone through in just the last few months or last few years. Even when I quit smoking, all of a sudden, there's a lot of anarchists who kind of moved down here to Acapulco during the first few Anarchapulco conferences. I think this year, 30 people just stayed. They didn't even go back. And I heard after I quit smoking that almost everyone who smoked here quit as well. And it's sort of like this energy, this sort of people see you doing something. I'm not saying you should quit smoking or should smoke or anything like that. Do whatever you want. But if it was obvious that some people had that idea that they wanted to quit, and so when you saw that, when they saw that I did it, it sort of gave them some inspiration to do things like that. And all these things are like that. So as you make more changes to improve yourself, whether it even be doing something like what you were mentioning, like growing your own food, what can happen then is all of a sudden all your neighbors say, hey, do you notice our neighbors, they grow all their own food, and I just talked to them and they spend no money, when we spend $600 a month at the grocery store. And have you noticed we're always sick with our kids who are vaccinated and eating all this GMO food, and they're never sick? Interesting. And then they start to change. And so all this stuff kind of happens very energetically and very just nicely. Instead of that old sort of approach, which a lot of people use, which is to go to your neighbors and tell them, you better grow your own garden, you're stupid. That doesn't work as well as showing by example, right? So all these things are really important, and I think it's great. You're kind of integrating that all into what you're doing. And I know you're going on your Decentralize Your Life tour, which you say it's focused on promoting a decentralized life via agorism, freedom cells, and self-healing. So we talked about the self-healing quite a bit already. And you're going on this insane tour. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you plan to do? Because you're in one city every day. So what exactly is the plan?
Yeah, so this was, I know that Kokesh did 60 cities in 65 days. We're not going to go that crazy. We're doing 46 cities, and it's spread out where we're doing 2 weeks in Texas starting in June, and then we're going to come home, and it will be, the longest period we'll be on the road is 6 weeks straight, which is definitely going to be pretty intense. But, we have a window of availability where we have a vehicle available to us. So we're trying to run with that and just make it happen. And also last year when I first kind of posted hey, if I was to do a national tour and try to schedule this, would anybody be interested in helping? And I got a really overwhelming response. And that was before I went to Standing Rock. And then going to Standing Rock really helped increase the size of my audience even further. So I've been trying to feed this new audience the message of anarchism and agorism and freedom cells and all the things I talk about, and it's just been blossoming. So after I came back from Standing Rock, I again said, hey, who would be interested in helping with this? And was really overwhelmed and just humbled by the amount of support. We're doing 46 cities, and I don't know if you can see this map back here, but there's actually probably 50 to 60 cities who are interested, but some of them are just not close enough to justify going that far yet or out there. So this is the kind of first test run. And I do anticipate doing another one next year, and there's people in Europe who are asking me to come there as well. So the goal is, I've sort of been putting this 5-year plan is put out the book, tour for a couple of years, spreading the message. Really, like, I want to go visit other cities and help build freedom cells. Like, literally say, okay, you guys are here, let's bring you together. This is what we've been doing. Here's some ideas. And by the end of the tour, be able to step back and be like, wow, there's now 46 new freedom cells spread around the country working on these ideas. And now through freedomcells.org, the Freedom Cell Network website, we're able to start creating counter-economic activity. We're able to help each other when we're traveling and just using it in all these different ways. But another big goal of the tour is, besides just, like, I'm coming to your town to speak about my book, I wanted it to be more than just look at me, focus on me, this is what I have to offer, but instead also try to highlight what's going on in these local communities. So we're going to visit your city, and during the day, we're going to do what we're calling action days, which basically just means that we're going to give back and participate in the community in some way. So whether that means going out and doing homeless outreach, doing a park cleanup, doing some kind of guerrilla gardening, or volunteering at a community garden, we're going to contribute to every community that we visit. And then at the evening, it'll be the speaking event, which will open up with about a 10 or 15-minute meditation that I'm going to lead. I'll talk about the book. If John is doing well health-wise, for those who don't know, he's currently battling lymphoma, all naturally with CBD oil and tons of other methods without chemo. If he's up to doing so, he plans to come along and talk about the book with me, and then also get into some of his natural health stuff. I'll talk about the Freedom Cells concept, and then my two housemates here at the Freethinker House, which is the hub where we do the Houston Freedom Cell, they'll talk about their experience and everything that we've done with this concept and the ways that we've applied it. And then we're going to end it with some acoustic music from them. So basically trying to take all the elements of what we consider to be the conscious resistance, which to me is more of a cultural evolution. It's not just about politics, but it's about getting the musicians and the artists and actually changing the culture of statism. Because until you have, as we've seen with like Backwards and other artists, until you have, freedom-minded, anarchist-minded musicians and artists and movies and art, just creating this whole new culture, people are going to keep getting the status message reinforced no matter where they get it from. All the media reinforces that message. Anytime in the mainstream, the dead stream, that they use anarchy, we know that they mean chaos and violence. So we need to counteract that culture that they put forth, and that's a big part of the conscious resistance. So we're going to bring that. We're going to bring volunteerism, agorist activity. We're going to spread the message of freedom cells, have meditation, have music, and just do that in 46 cities. Starting in Texas in early June, going to the West Coast in July, and we'll be on the road all the way through August. We're going to hit up the Jackalope Freedom Festival in Arizona, and then come back down to Texas at the end of August. And then in October, after taking a month off, we'll spend 2 weeks going to the East Coast and visiting all the people over there. So really excited about it, because there's going to be a lot of potential here. As I said, we've got a pretty good response of people who are just helping coordinate. Each city is basically, they're helping us find somewhere to volunteer. They're helping us find an event and a venue for the evening. And we're also trying to do it in a consistent way. And I know that last time we talked, it was about Standing Rock, and I was kind of giving my examples for why I don't support the oil industry, mainly because it's a product of statism and the monopoly of statism on other forms of alternative and cleaner energy. So in line with that, we're trying to see if we can get a waste vegetable oil van, or a van that is able to be converted to run on waste vegetable oil, and try to do the whole tour that way too, to just be as close to the principles as possible that we're trying to espouse. And if that's not possible, then the other idea is to essentially plant fruit trees along the whole path to try to offset, like, hey, we're having to use the oil industry and their BS gas, and we're having to use their products. So we're going to, every time we use it, we're going to offset that by planting fruit trees, guerrilla garden style, across the country. So there's a lot of different elements to this tour, but it's basically taking those messages that we're putting in the book and putting them into real world action. I just realized for myself that I can keep writing books, I can keep writing essays and posting memes and posting online and growing my online presence, but that only does so much. Like, these kind of ideas are meant to be about action and taking action. These are the kind of ideas that need to be implemented in person, showing people like, hey, this is how you do it. This is what we're doing. This is how you can do it in your community, and then helping that message grow. And all of this building towards, as I said, the intentional community in 2020. So I plan to spend the next 3, 4, 5 years just touring, spreading this message, helping people build freedom cells, and just looking towards building land and actively propagating the message against the state, because I think that's what it's going to take. Is the state is in decline, despite what it may seem. They definitely have their strong man there, and there's a lot of people who worship the state. But I do think that overall they're an unsustainable institution, and we know that. So we have to be prepared. We can either sit and wait for FEMA or wait for things to, hit the fan, and we can go loot and riot like they're doing down in Venezuela, or wait in money lines or wait in bread lines, or we can go get that FEMA help from the government, or we can be the people, as you were saying earlier, that can help others. It does ripple out. Once you start getting active and focusing on yourself, I've seen this in my life. Other people are inspired. They're like, hey, I want to live like that. This guy looks like he's doing pretty happy. He's feeling pretty good. He's changing, and that inspires them to change. And in the same way, if we start getting active in our communities and building, we're going to inspire other people. People are only inspired so much by theoretical books and YouTube videos and stuff. It only goes so far, So I want to be as much of an example of this message as possible, and just get out there. And so it'll be me, my partner Miriam, who you met in Anarchapulco, and my 2 housemates. And we're just going to hit the road this summer. Right now, we're doing a crowdfunding campaign until April 15th. For anybody who's interested, I'll send you the link, Jeff. But really, the main thing, we're going to either pay out of pocket. We're also looking for sponsors for this tour. The Decentralize Your Life, the reason we're calling it that is taking decentralization and applying it to every area of your life. So again, education, unschooling, homeschooling. If you're a parent, none of us are parents yet, but in the future we may be. Peaceful parenting, taking your kids away from the state, decentralizing your life in the sense of the food production systems, decentralizing your life in the sense of the police, taking away support for the police and defending our own communities, learning to defend yourself, skill shares, all these different ways to apply decentralization. Of course, the currency, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Dash. So we're going to be promoting all these different things, and we're looking for sponsors who are into these ideas, who want to help us make this tour a reality. We're going to be on the road for a total of 8 weeks, and we're happy to take anybody's products and ideas with us that matches what we're trying to build, and we're really excited about that. And so just been putting that idea out there, and now it's slowly becoming a reality. It's like, I opened my mouth, and now people are putting events together, so we're going with it. We're going to make it happen one way or the other.
That's great. Sometimes on YouTube, you get some pathetic loser putting in, all you guys do is talk. You're not actually doing anything. Well, I think on this one, we can definitely say you're definitely doing a lot of things. It's quite amazing what you've committed yourself to doing. And by the way, when you're planting some of those fruit trees along the way, maybe take a giant bag of hemp seeds and just throw them out the truck the entire time. Let's see the entire U.S. is covered with cannabis plants. That'd be awesome. So yeah, why don't you just let people know where they can find out more about Decentralize Your Life tour, if they want to get involved with having one in their area, or find out if there is one in their area, or anything else you want to let them know about that, and also let them know about the book and where they can get that. Yeah,
thank you, Jeff. So all the information for the tour is at theconsciousresistance.com/tour, and that's got the dates. It's got a video explaining everything I just explained if you want to share that with people. And you can email me at derrick@theconsciousresistance.com if you've got resources or want to help out in any way. And as far as the book, you can go to theconsciousresistance.com/books. All 3 of the books in the Conscious Resistance series are there. You can actually order the book now. It officially comes out April 7th, but you can go ahead and start ordering it now. And on April 7th, the PDF, the free download, will be available as well, because we want the information to be out there. So if we can make a little money off of it, cool. We're happy to do that. But a lot of times we end up just giving the books away because we really want people to understand the message. Of course, we want to be paid for the work we put into it. That's always appreciated. But if you can't afford it, or you want to test it out with a free download, go that route, see if you like it, and then maybe order yourself one. And I'm also in the process of releasing the audiobooks for all 3 books as well, for people who digest audiobooks better as well. Takes a little bit of time, but I'm working on the first book. Audiobook should be out by the time you guys hear this, and the other 2 shortly after there. So consciousresistance.com/tour and theconsciousresistance.com/books. That's where all the info can be found.
That's great. We'll have all the links down below, and get out there if he's coming through. If Derrick Broze is coming through your area, and he's pretty much coming through every area in the U.S., it's literally pretty much everywhere. Check it out. I'm sure it'd be a great time, and check out his book as well. It looks amazing. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, share down below. Definitely just like it. I see like less than 10% of people hit like. That's all you got to do. I know it's a lot of work. I know you're kind of tired. just click. Just press. Just one little finger. Just go like this. There you go. You just helped spread some information. See how you're changing the world already. It's just little things like that. It's all it takes. And so that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.
From Acapulco, Mexico, This is Anarchast.